All right, Matt, I've recorded this probably about 6 times. It's mostly because I found that I have been rambling this entire time, or I find something new with my app that I want to tweak with. So I'm going to try and keep this as express as possible. Promineo week 10. Whoops. Do you see what I mean? Promineo week 10, we are supposed to use HTML, Bootstrap, and JavaScript to create a one-page app. I kind of broke the rules quite a bit, as you're probably familiar with me doing. The application is going to it's not going to use a Bootstrap table, and that's because I wanted to be able to use some other functionality within the app. That required me to use Bootstrap accordion, and I hope that's not a big deal. I'm still using Bootstrap. I just didn't want to use the table because it kind of limited me in what it could do. This is going to be a long video again because I don't want to record two tonight. And I also didn't create a single page app. I actually created a multi-page app because I like the format of the my code, the my app, and then the landing page for the project. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into the functionality of the app. To just kind of get a preview of what it can do, it can take in, it's a form, Bootstrap form, stylized with it. You can enter in a to-do name, like make hamburgers. And then put in a description, dude, make a hamburger. You're starving. Click the form submit button, and it adds a to-do button to the app, or to-do item to the list. The cool thing that I decided to change up with this app is I decided to make it a full CRUD app to where I can create an item, I can read an item, I can update an item, and I can delete an item. As you can see, I can add another one, make lettuce. To do details, you can make that, submits it, runs it through, adds it in. The update functionality is as simple as clicking on the one that you want to update, adding whatever details you want with cheese, slash cheeseburgers, clicking submit, and it'll update that item for you. Though the final functionality of the app is actually deleting, and that is simple too. You just simply click on delete and it's gone. The cool thing about this app is that it is stored in local storage. It is not one that you will lose over time. Just in case you were worried about forgetting about your hamburgers, you can see I can click on refresh all day and it does not care at all about it. And it basically uses the local storage API to store these to-dos in memory. Though, as you can tell, after I clicked deleted on the make lettuce one, that got removed from local memory. I did all of this with TypeScript, and it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. Let's go on over to the JavaScript, and I'll give you a very brief rundown of how it works. The JavaScript starts off by first getting the form element and also getting the, I called it my table container because I started off with table, but it's really just the to-do container. I didn't change the variable name. Should probably do that. But it runs through. Then these are class items, so I'll get to those in a second. Sorry, these are class items and some TypeScript stuff, so I'll get to those in a second. But it checks to see in the local storage if there is a to-dos item stored in local storage. If there is, it parses that as either a to-do item or an empty array, right? It runs a tertiary. It sets to-dos parsed to check to see if current do's exist, and if it is, it parses it and saves that as an array of to-do items, or it sets it as an empty array. The reason why you do this is because TypeScript requires a lot of checking, and this is just to prevent yourself from doing any bugs. It then creates a new to-do list in the window, on the window, passing in a reference to the to-do list container as well as the to-dos that were parsed from memory. And then it tells that to-do list to render. If we look at the to-do list, just like I said, it takes into its constructor the container element, and it takes in the default values. Those are the ones that are pulled from local storage. And it sets those in memory. I actually mapped them, or I did the JavaScript map function on the default values, going over each of the to-dos and setting a new to-do item into that array. And the reason why I'm doing that is because the render method for this class actually loops through them and runs a method on each of those items called render. I'll get up into that later, but the add to do item actually takes in the form submission, which actually I should probably go over that. So rewind. The form is actually grabbed via, or I put an event handler on it called form event handler. It's very verbose, I know. It prevents the default of the form, and then it takes the form and passes it to the constructor form data, and then passes that over to object.fromEntries. This is some TypeScript hacking to get it to work properly. I just found it on Stack Overflow, if I'm being honest with you. But I passed it to object.fromEntries, or the data, the form data constructor, and then constructed an object from that to then pass to my to-do list.item, and then I reset the form. The add to-do item function takes in a to-do item, object of type I to-do item CLS, which is an interface that's above. It's how you define types in TypeScript. You can do an interface or you can do a type. I just do an interface because it's easier. It creates a new to-do item, passing in the item's ID, the name, the description, the container element that's on the to-do list, and then a reference to the parent class. The reason why I do that is for another reason, which you'll see. It's for the update method. It basically tells the to-do list to basically re-render, and I think it also tells it to update the local storage, which there's a method on here for updating local storage here, which I don't need this console log on anymore. I'm looking at it. Anyways, it will create a new to-do item, push that to the to-do list, update the local storage, and then run render. Render is a method that loops through all of the to-do items and then runs the method on them called render, which will generate it'll generate some new HTML using string interpolation. Actually, first grabbing a reference to the element if it already exists in the page, right? And the reason why I did that was because when I updated or refreshed the page, I wanted to make sure that, to check to see whether or not it was in there already. And if it wasn't, then I wanted to replace that element essentially instead of adding to the end again, right? For the UI purposes. Otherwise, I had an issue that was going on. That's the reason why I created that reference. It creates a div, gives it an ID of the to-do item, puts a couple of classes on there from Bootstrap, puts some inner HTML using string interpolation and some of the data that's saved in the to-do item, and then returns that in an object, which I then destructure in render here and here to do exactly what I just said. Replace it and then add the event listeners, or append it and add the event listeners. The event listeners are things for like updating the update form and the delete form. I needed a way to be able to, once they were added to the site, I needed to be able to add the event listeners that basically handled the form and the delete button. The update works in a very similar way. It updates the local storage and it renders, sets the description and the name to the new data. Yeah, that should be it. At least all that's relevant. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email in Slack.